Our history began in 2006 when a group of Palestinian and Israeli individuals who were each in their own ways involved in the cycle of violence agreed to put down their weapons and meet the other. From there, the organization was born and has grown to become a movement committed to ending the occupation of Palestine and creating a peaceful future for all. Today, we focus on three main areas: education for young people and their teachers, protecting human rights, and parallel events such as the joint memorial and the Thenakba ceremony. So today we're going to be focusing on the joint memorial that's taking place next week and discussing it in the context of the current situation here in Israel and Palestine. You were invited to ask us questions, so thank you for such an overwhelming response. I tried to group the most commonly asked questions together, and I will ask Sulaiman and Chen to each respond to the questions. And I expect that we have about an hour together today. So let's start. So firstly, Sulaiman, can you introduce yourself and tell us what the joint memorial ceremony means to you?
Good evening, good morning, everybody. Do you hear me well? Just making sure. Thanks, Laura, for organizing this important webinar, pre-Memorial Day. And thanks for our team that really doing working 24 hours a day in order to make this big, huge global event, I would say, successful. So I really want to highlight and appreciate that. My name is Sulaiman Khatib. I'm speaking to you from Ramallah together this evening with my partner, friend, comrade Chen Alon in Tel Aviv, as you can see in the screen. And I'm happy to see some of familiar faces and some new faces here. So really thanks for everyone that's joining and people that will listen later for this webinar. So as I said, I live in Ramallah. I born in Jerusalem area in a village called Hizma. And shortly, my background, I was in jail, Israeli jail, for 10 years and a half, from the age of 14, basically. So as to continue what Laura said about Combatants for Peace, is basically the founders of Combatants for Peace. We are just two of them here, Chen Alon and myself, were either in the Israeli army and at some point, or in Palestinian activists that were in jail, and at some point reached the a practical conclusion that there is no military solution for this conflict. And beyond this, this became, we adopt nonviolent struggle in order to liberate our people from being either oppressed or oppressors. Of course, through this journey of almost 17 years now, the movement has become like one of the central Palestinian-Israeli joint nonviolence movements in the land, trying to create a different reality to our peoples here. And as Laura mentioned, the focus tonight will be on the joint memorial ceremony, which is started 18 years ago. And I believe my friend Chen will explain more about it, because he's one of the people that stand behind it over the years and the years, producing this big event. And I'm aware totally that this is like a super controversial event to humanize what's so-called the enemy, while we still live in an active conflict. For me personally, I would say this, like since like the beginning of the memorial ceremony, together with our Palestinian and Israeli partners, this event basically allowing me and other people to dream of a different reality. And really, I would say, while I understand how triggering and challenging this event for many people, because it's hard for people to see the others as human as they are, and stick with their, victimhood and their identity and their narrative, I believe this radical revolutionary idea has succeeded fully to transform thousands of hearts and minds of people of this land and beyond this. This event became a global event, actually to show an example, a model, what our life could be. And I really quote one of the organizers of last year ceremony. After the successful ceremony last year, he said, when he was excited, I wish this will become a future Palestinian-Israeli event as the mainstream thing. And this is really, hopefully, our intention. And we know this is a long way to go. I think I will turn the microphone to Chen, Laura.
Thank you. Thank you, Suli, and thank you all for joining us tonight. We're very grateful to witness that we have more partners, that we are not alone here with our disastrous occupation, and it really empowers us, especially nowadays before the memorial ceremony, that we're being attacked from, even from our camp, but obviously from the Minister of Defense and from the right wing, fascist government of Israel, current government. So it means a lot. It's not a regular meeting for me. I'm charging myself for the next 6 days that I need the energy and empowerment. So thank you all for coming. And thank you, Laura, for charging us with energy from abroad. I'm Chen, Alon. I'm from Tel Aviv, as written. I have a parallel story when Suli says he was 10 years in jail. I was 4 years in the Israeli army. I became an officer, and then 10 years in reserve duty, and I became a major. So that's kind of so Suli, if he was a Palestinian officer, he would be a major. Well, 10 years in jail is parallel to a major rank. I'm saying this because it means that I was between the year of 87, 88, when I was joining the army, until the age of 2002, when I refused to serve the occupation and I was sentenced to jail. I was in one mode, one psyche of what is an Israeli Jewish citizen, man, officer, artist, citizen. And since then, I was transformed from this to someone who's transforming his past and past in violence into a new thing. I didn't know in 2002 that in 2 or 3 years, 2004, 2005, another transformation will happen to me, and that would be a transformation from uninational psyche into a binational psyche, or the zero-sum game, us and them. It's either us or them, into a very confusing new way of thinking and feeling. So all this is an introduction, because that's what the joint memorial ceremony does. It is so transformative because it attacks people's emotion to change, to transform their psyche. So that happens at the same time or simultaneously, emotionally, through the most deep or the deepest pain that we can feel, and all of us, Israelis and Palestinians, the loss of our beloved ones is very intimate. I know people. I have friends from the army. Every family has their own, in Israel and in Palestine, their own beloved ones who we lost. So this journey from being an all-Israeli Jewish guy to thinking of myself as a patriot, transforming to a refusenik, someone who will take responsibility and refuse to serve the occupation and the apartheid because it's the destruction of the vision and the dream of my father and my grandfather, who were Zionist and that's the only reason why they escaped from the fate of all their other family members in the Holocaust. So I cut the chain, and I joined a new community of people that think and feel differently. So at the first year when we founded the movement, the Combatants for Peace, 2005 or 6, you can see it in the film Disturbing the Peace. It took us almost a year and a half to go out to the public because we had to build trust among us in order to go out and to say we are Israelis and Palestinians in the same movement. So at the first year, we got a call from the bereaved families. It was not even the forum yet. It was some kind of an organization led by Buma Inba, who's a bereaved father who lost his son Yotam in Lebanon. And after 1 year that they did the Israeli-Palestinian ceremony, they say we cannot handle this emotionally and from other perspective. And they say, you, Combatants for Peace, a year-old movement, you're responsible for the loss in both societies, you're responsible for the killing. Now, if you've been transformed and you establish this movement, take responsibility and take the ceremony. So we started. I remember the first ceremony was 70 people in a fringe theater in Tel Aviv, in Tmuna Theater. And the model of the ceremony was the Israeli national ceremony, as I grew up on. So we knew that we want to have testimonies of bereaved parents who lost their children for the violence. We knew that we want to have some music. And we knew that we want only the pain to speak on these ceremonies. No symbols, no aesthetics, no fireworks, as we call it, on stage or in theater or in production. Only like what happened to us, only through the experience, through the emotions, through the conscience, through the real encounter with real people and their hearts, things will change. People can experience transformation only through this. So we started intuitively to shape this ceremony as we knew it, and we're making some adaptation to the binationality of the ceremony, to Arab music or Palestinian music and Israeli Jewish music. To have both languages, Hebrew and Arabic. Each bereaved family member will speak in his or her own language. Everything will be translated. And as Suli said, we realized that we came up with something that was, a year later, there were 200 people. 2 years later, we had 500 people. At the 4th year or the 5th year, we already had 1,000 people, and it grew exponentially each year until 2016, 17, 18, before the COVID. We had 10,000 people in the Ayalon Park of Tel Aviv. And then when COVID started, we started to make it online, to broadcast it, and we had 100,000 people, then 200,000 people. So we realized that this deep model of creating this, as Julie said, it's a hopeful bubble or utopian space of people in their lowest point of pain and sorrow. This is where we, the people who've been transformed, we know that the deepest pain or the most vicious violence can be transformative, not for revenge, but for rehumanization of the other, for reconciliation, for creating activist and political alliances, and so on. And we realize that we get a lot of interest, and I think it serves a need, not only of Israelis and Palestinians, but people who believe that through pain humanity and sorrow of the real people who suffer from the war and the conflict and the violence. Through this transformative energy, we can make a change. And this year we are returning after 3 years to the Hayarkon Park. I'm still directing the ceremony this year, like every year. And like every year, the defense minister decided not to allow Palestinians to get in. So we are preparing ourselves to shoot them, to make videos and all the translation, Hebrew, Arabic on the screen. And I'm already, as you can hear, I'm already very moved and energized by the preparation. And I hope you'll be online with us next week.
Thank you so much. The next question. Suli, how do you address the power dynamic between Israelis and Palestinians through the memorial?
Thanks, Laura. I think it's really important for us, maybe, usually because for some people, they're confused about our positions and Combatants for Peace in generally, and specifically when we talk about the memorial ceremony and other events that we, people, as I said, triggered, challenged by the idea of, how do you compare our victims with their victims? So I just want to make it clear that in Combatants for Peace, I believe since day one, the power dynamic was recognized. And it's not just a minute of conversation about the power dynamic among the Israelis and Palestinians, even in the movement in generally. And within this sacred, important event for us, as Chen mentioned, just one example of the power dynamic, we just got a decision by the Israeli defense minister to prevent Palestinians from joining the ceremony. This is one of the logistical, political, ideological barriers for us to be together with our Israeli partners, though hopefully we this decision will be changed through the Israeli High Court. Still, because of the system, how the system built in the land, actually, as we know, as a fact, as a truth, because we want to speak to our truth, the Israelis has more power, of course. And generally, I would say, with that said, like in a common space, like in Combatants for Peace and in the memorial specifically, we always work and trying to be consciously aware that we do decisions together, the decision making. And this is actually the model we're trying to provide here. How can we share the resources here? And how can we share the space and the time and the decision making? Actually, this is really also beautiful to bring the knowledge of the two societies with all the differences among each other within these societies and in between. If we really work many times to address the power dynamic in different levels. And that's why I think our game here is not really a blaming game. We are not part of this blaming game, or who's more the bad guy in town, or the victimhood also coming to my mind while speaking about that. And I have to say, maybe Chen mentioned the transformation that we pass through as ex-combatants, for example. The easiest thing, honesty, is to stick to your own narrative. And the feeling of victim, to expand to a new narrative that we're trying to create here that is excluded, that doesn't include a group of people, and that address also the power dynamic, because we have been, traumatized through generations here, when we talk about the current Israeli occupation and previously the British colonization, and so a history of even we can go further to the global south that is really suffering from centuries of colonization. So this work is really very deep, and very personal and collective to overcome the generation of trauma together. And definitely we are by saying this, we are not trying to victimize anybody or any group of people, rather than take responsibility for our own actions. And we believe that we can, we hold the destiny in our hands. It's not something that we have to live forever in this fight, in this conflict. And the Memorial Day actually ceremony is approved, as Chen mentioned, even by numbers. I'm personally not a number person. I believe neither Chen. So if we think about how small a group of people started this Memorial Day, was really small. Nobody knew about it. And now it became a central event in here and globally. This is really gives me a lot of hope that definitely dreamers or people that think, okay, they live in utopia and La La Land or something, they could really change the reality, while this change starts with ourselves, of course, and recognizing our past and our healing and our traumas and our challenges and triggers. And there is a lot of work to do as we speak. There is a lot of inner work and outer work that we have to do, which is take a long, long time.
Can I add a few words, Alawa?
Of course.
Yeah, I first of all, I want to be honest and to say that this is the power dynamics, or it's an issue that is with us since day one in Combatants for Peace. And it's not only the outside of us. I mean, I just want to give you one anecdote that says it all. Only after 4 years of Combatants for Peace, we realized the fact that we have only Israeli treasurer of the movement. We didn't have an Israeli. We have all double roles, like the coordinator and the media coordinator and stuff like that. And we had only one Israeli treasurer for 3 or 4 years. And I remember as a co-founder, it was very natural for me that, we have bank account in Israel. And I remember that I was resisting the demand of the Palestinian side in the movement. We said, why do you need 2 treasurers? One is enough, and it should be Israeli. And they said, you don't even aware of the fact that you think as an occupier, that you think in a colonialist way of thinking, saying, yeah, if we have 1 treasurer, it should be an Israeli guy or Israeli treasurer. Yeah, there were only guys back then. Now we have more women in the movement. That's another transformation that we went through. So I just want to say that it's inside the movement, and it's an ongoing process, an endless ongoing process of getting rid of the occupier mindset, the colonialist mindset, and patriarchy mindset, and so on. This is an ongoing process, an endless process that while you're working with your ex-enemy or ex-occupied partners, it's very effective. And the other thing I wanted to say is that it helps us to be now to stand together against these power dynamics. So a lot of questions, a lot of answers. I will let when the power dynamics comes up, I will let Suli answer the questions that comes from Israelis, and that's another very effective way. And we realized that we took it from Martin Luther King and other nonviolent thinkers, that, for example, if the Minister of Defense is not allowing Palestinians to come to the ceremony, so we make the apartheid visible by putting Palestinians on screen and acknowledge the fact that they are not here. And that's why we are saying to the people in the park, you are witnessing people human beings on screen because of the apartheid system. And that makes it visible for people that the Palestinians are not here because they didn't get the permit. So make the oppression or make the apartheid system visible is one of the strategies of nonviolent struggle.
So, Chen, to stay on that kind of topic, we had lots of questions asking how the current political situation in Israel is affecting your society.
Wow. First of all, I have to say that there is a good side of it, of the current political situation, that Israel as a democracy actually took off its mask. You know, we are shouting for years in demonstration, there's no such thing as a democracy with occupation. There's no such thing as a democracy with apartheid. And all of a sudden, it's in the discourse. So I'm not saying that we've got into the mainstream, but the situation in Israel now is really explosive and energetic. And I just went to the big demonstration in Tel Aviv yesterday. There were almost 100,000 people every Saturday, at least 100,000 people. So, and all the people around me, all my family and my friends, that for 20 years I'm saying to them, the occupation is the destruction of the state of Israel, is the destruction of the democracy. They always say, no, there is no connection between, in Israel there's a democracy, free media, free elections, human rights, and all the components of democracy. And I say, yeah, but we have more than 3 million people in the West Bank, and of course in 2 million in Gaza, that are under our military regime. So it's a military dictatorship. And they say, yeah, but it's temporary, and it's because we don't have a partner. It's because the Palestinians, because they are terrorists, and so on and so on. And now I feel that these wars between leave us alone. We want to preserve our democracy within the 67 borders, and witnessing the Arab-Israeli population that is not joining because of the Israeli flags, because of the patriotic discourse of the protestation. I think that things are starting to change, and we cannot isolate the discourse about democracy and the occupation and the apartheid from the occupation and the apartheid. It's not easy. We work very hard to do this. We have every Saturday in each and every big demonstration in Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, we have a block, anti-occupation block, as we call it, a gush neged hakibush. In Hebrew, it sounds better. And I can tell you from first-hand experience that at the first weeks, people were very negative to the Palestinian flags, to the signs that they say, why you're damaging the protestation, you're damaging the struggle. And in the last, let's say, 5-6 weeks, I see a transformation, I see a different reaction. People say, we understand why you're here, we understand why you're standing with the signs against the occupation, and I must say that the Ben Gvir and Smotrich and all the right wing, even without Netanyahu himself, the extreme right wing religious ministers are doing very good job for us by showing and demonstrating that Israel democracy was kidnapped by the right-wing extremist, fascist, religious population, namely the settlers. And it's now very clear to the center left and, of course, to the left. So I'm optimistic that in the end of the road of these demonstrations, people will acknowledge and understand that there is no such thing as democracy with occupation.
Sully, would you like to add anything?
So just to add to what Chen said from here, from the Palestinian side, I would say this, basically the ongoing systematic abuse of Palestinian rights living here exists before this late Israeli radical right-wing government. So we just to mention, maybe that since the beginning of this year, more than 120 Palestinians have been killed. There is a killing campaign, especially against teenagers, young people, and not to talk about the thousands of prisoners, and not to talk about the stealing of the land here, the growing of the settlements, including what's called illegal settlements by Israeli standards. I live in Ramallah in Area A. When I go to my family, which is inside of Jerusalem in Area C, you just see more and more organized groups of settlers taking over another mountain, another hill. So the epic, I think, Daniel, you need to yes, the effect of the new Israeli government is one, things became much more clear to some people, I would say, I'm careful, and maybe to the outside world, what we have been saying for a long time. And it's maybe to say also for Israelis to that have been living as a privilege, that honestly, that went out now against the new Israeli policies, the government policies, actually, they felt their privilege has been touched. So I believe you can't have it all. If your neighbors living under this miserable situation without opportunities, and you control the water resources. And even, when we talk about, I like nature a lot. I grew up in a village. I see even in around the kids of my family also, they really, they can't, basically my village from Jerusalem is 10 minutes drive, but we can't. There is a checkpoint, a stable checkpoint, and then there is a separation wall. And recently in the last years, they have a few spots for the army around there. So basically the presence of the military and the settlers is really all over the place. I have even on a personal level, my sister lives in Nablus, where in the last few months, actually, the army is going in and out, arresting and killing people. Basically, my nephew, 14 years old, has been shot by the army with a real bullet in his shoulder, and you have to live with this. He was in a demonstration after school in solidarity with Nablus. So, unfortunately, this new government, as more than the one before, believe that they can, banish the Palestinians, from dreaming of having our own, freedom and in our own homeland, that we can't have any rights, basically. And this is not gonna happen anyway, despite all the losses that's happening in reality. I think I'm optimistic in the long run, but I am aware that this is a long journey, and it's not even for our own generation. I believe what happened to ourselves in the past, to transform from the idea us or them, that more people will be transformed. I see actually more people from the Israeli side understanding the direct link between the ongoing systematic occupation and the going far right in the Israeli side, and the control of the settler movement of the Israeli politics right now, which is really dangerous for everybody, as we can see lately, police engaging with attacking people that bring in Al-Aqsa Mosque. while claiming like being democracy and the freedom of religion. Yesterday, we seen also Israeli police attacking Christian Palestinian in front of the church. And nowadays, with social media, with camera everywhere, this can't be hidden as it used before. So I hope this will be a bit more turning point towards a joint struggle for everybody that lives here to have full right in whatever states that will come out of this.
Thank you, Sully. The next question is, why do you hold the joint memorial ceremony on Israeli Memorial Day? Who would like to start?
Oh, this is for Chen usually.
For Chen, okay.
I feel a little bit responsible for that, and it's a complicated one. It's very loaded, and I think first of all, one has to understand that this question comes from people who know that the Memorial Day in Israel is the most sacred day in the year, along the year. It's even, you feel it all day long, that there is a certain, I remember it as a child, I was kind of afraid of this day. It was so sacred, and I remember the ceremonies in school, and then in the Boy Scouts, and then in the army. It was always something that is so sacred, and its message was later on I understood it. It took me many years to understand it. Only when I started to be involved in the Israeli-Palestinian memorial ceremony, I understood that this sacred is main message is that war is something which is not in human control, not in human hands. It's like we got it from God. It's something that is beyond us or above us. And there is a very famous saying in the Israeli culture, "Bemotam tzivu lanu et hachaim." And it actually says, the subtext, I'm a theater director, so I always hear subtext in text, that the subtext of these ceremonies is that we have no other choice. That's our fate, and we have to continue to struggle. We have to continue sacrifices our children. We have to continue this endless war because it's not in our hands. That's the main message of the sacred day and these ceremonies. And when we started this journey of the Israeli-Palestinian ceremonies, the only thing that Buma Inbar, the founder of this, and he lost his son in the war in Lebanon, he said the only thing, or the most important thing for me, that it will be in this sacred day, in this sacred time, where the siren goes on at 8 o'clock in the evening. Everybody stopped their lives for 1 minute just to breathe, to be silent. He said, I wanted to be there because this sacred moment, this sacred day, this is where the transformation should happen. And that's why at the beginning we call it an alternative Israeli-Palestinian memorial ceremony. And we want it to be a real challenging alternative, not a sidekick or, just another day that we do the same. No, it's a very deep symbolic alternative and concrete alternative. If you're coming to our ceremony, you still feel the same pain. You still feel the same sacred of human lives. You still feel the togetherness of bereaving together, but you do it with the other side, and you are not accepting the fact that it's beyond our control and not our responsibility. This ceremony serves as an alternative by saying this is in our hands. It's our responsibility to stop war and not to perpetuate it with more and more and more ceremonies.
Thank you, Chen. Suli, is there anything you want to add, or I can ask you the next question?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay.
Wait, one more sentence, Laura, please.
Go ahead.
About this, just a personal story. I mean, when my daughter, just saying something about the transformation of the ceremony that I experienced with my own family. I'm directing the ceremony, and I'm in the control with the lighting and the sound and everything. I'm not emotionally related to this. When my daughter, that she was since she was a kid, very young kid, she came to since she was 7 years old, she came to the ceremonies, and even though she got to the last class in high school when she was almost 18 years old, she still believed that she will serve in the army. So it was obvious like any other. And I remember the ceremony of 2006. I was in the control, and she was with her mother, my partner, in the audience. And I just, after we finished everything, I came to there and I saw my daughter crying. And she said, I've decided not to join the army. And I said, what happened? Why now? And she said that she listened in the ceremony to Igal Elchanan, the brother of Smadar Elchanan, and Arab Aramin, the son of Bassam and the brother of Abir Aramin. These two brothers were together on stage. They both lost their sisters, one for suicide attack. Igal lost his sister Smadar in 1997, and Arab Aramin lost his sister Abir in 2007. And they both were on stage saying, we refuse to be part of the violent circle. We refuse to be victims, as Suli said. We refuse to continue this bloodshed and this violent circle. And they said, we are saying it because we lost our sisters, and we have to take responsibility, and we refuse to be part of this. And she said that she listened to them, and she realized that her responsibility is to refuse to be part of the violent circle. And then she said she decided not to serve the occupation. And a few months later, she had to be drafted to the army. She refused, and she was almost half a year in jail for doing so. And she joined. Actually, she always blamed me. She said, because I grew up in Combatants for Peace, I transform these stories of Igal and Arab into the action of refusing to serve the occupation. So I just wanted to say that my experience is that it happened to me in my own family. It's not a theory or a concept.
Thank you, Chen. The next question. Are you ever afraid that who you think are your friends are also your enemies? Suli.
Well, I'm still thinking of the story from Chen, because I knew it actually before. And actually, Tamar now is the coordinator of the Thenakba team. We have a Palestinian-Israeli team that coordinate the Thenakba, which is the Palestinian catastrophe, and this will happen in May 15. Talking about narratives, this is the Thenakba for Palestinian. It's the same moment day of the Israeli Independence Day. So again, like in the line of the memorial and other events, as Chen mentioned, we used to call it like a alternative, which is alternative to the mainstream narrative, but also providing options of hope for our peoples. So yeah, if I understand you correctly, actually, Laura, so the friendship that you can feel it here between me and Laura, between me and Chen, and Esther here also with us from Combatants, our dear sister and friend. I just want to say this is natural for us now after years. But if we go back at the beginning, like meeting the enemy and working with the enemy is something beyond imagination of many people. Like for some people, even if they are limited to, they can't imagine this on a real life, on a real in real time. And honestly, like it takes a lot of courage and a strong imagination to be able to, to hold your own roots where you started, and also like you're faithful, as Chen mentioned at the beginning, to your own people, to your own story, and the same time to expand, open your heart. I'm more in a Sufi world, like Rumi. I really got inspired from this. I come from a Muslim family. I'm not religious personally, and Ramadan is now, but there is a lot of inspirational things that we read in Sufism that really could help humans to expand our hearts and souls to the other, what we call the other, and turning this other into a brother in case. So I want to say there are different conversations about theory of change, right? And I think in Combatants for Peace, what we did when we started, we didn't have a facilitator or like a clear theory of change, or we know where we're going by heart. And like as we say in Middle East, shwaya shwaya, step by step, we learned a lot, we got to know each other, and this building this foundation of trust and care about for each other from the two sides, and more than two sides sometimes, like it creates like really a deep foundation that, as you can see now, like the idea, the nationalism, who's Israeli or who's Palestinian, despite our dynamic in the personal level, we don't feel it anymore. But again, it's really a long process of building this trust. I would say this is not special for us as Combatants for Peace, or for some people in a conflict that getting together. I really want to say this can serve as example for people in a conflict everywhere, or living in a different community, and they have a lot of stereotype about other communities and a lot of anger. It's also important and fine, to be honest and to live fully, truthfully. And I think the frustration and the anger and the pain has a space to work with that and to transform that. And I believe now I feel we are in Combatants for Peace and beyond, in much wider activist circles. With some people, like I feel family together that I choose, and that is really important. I'm aware that can't be copy-paste to somebody in a second. I hope that we have this magic solutions, but that's not how things were coming from, historical conflicted narratives. But I think that's why, for me, one reason that Combatants for Peace as a joint space is really important. And no matter for me how big we are or small, the fact that we still exist and make a noise, for me, this gives a lot of hope to a lot of people. And I feel proud of that, that I was part of this. And I am aware it's not about us personally. It's really about the bigger cause. And I feel also proud to have this type of partners that also refuse to serve the system and ready to show real solidarity. And our philosophy is more about engaging with each other than separation. And that's how I see specifically sharing the moments in the Memorial Day. And I want to add something, like what Chen mentioned, reminded me of many people I met over the years that they used to go to the local Israeli memorial service. And once they come to the joint Palestinian-Israeli memorial service, they never get back to the just Israeli one, because it's a new thing, it's a different thing, it's a very really moving. And also another community, also just to mention, the Palestinian within the Israeli, like whatever, like 48 borders, they also never feel part of the Israeli normal memorial service. While in our service, I think it provides a platform for every community lives here to feel included. And that's really worth all the, pain and like worries that, like suspicious. We are in a conflict zone. We come from a conflict area. There's a lot of suspicious about everybody and everything at the beginning. And I feel fully satisfied with our journey, actually, that we are here. I even didn't imagine, or maybe none of us, in the first secret meetings for 1 year, until we choose the name and the principles and the values. And you can see in the documentary Disturbing the Beast, this movie. I think this was a dream that we could continue until this moment. And of course, like some of our communities and neighbors are angry, because working with the enemy for some people is really challenging, and it's maybe a legitimate feeling. And for some people, these are not Israelis anymore, and these are not Palestinians anymore. I feel safe personally, also among my ethnic group here. I live in Ramallah. I don't hide the Zoom. I don't hide any social media. I feel our opinion and our group is legitimate, specifically also taking into consideration our past as being fighters. This gives you also some legitimization. And I'm aware some people will be uncomfortable from all sides, and it's the only way. Like, there is no way to satisfy everyone, and that's what makes me feel we are really doing something important. And yeah, it's worth our time and our efforts.
Thanks, Sully. I'm aware of time, and we don't have much left, and we still have two important questions. So, Chen, if you don't mind, I'll go to the next question. Okay. So lots of people wanting to know, I live abroad, so what can I do to support you and to help? Chen, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can start, although Suli is much better in this topic than I am. But I would say I started with this. First of all, don't leave us alone with our crazy, insane conflict. And please don't see yourselves as a witness to our conflict, or audience, or spectators. As I said, I'm a theater director, and my practice is very specific, that I do not accept the term or the concept of spectators. The theater that we're doing in Combatants for Peace, its aim is to transform every one of us from spectators to spectators, to see ourselves as actors in the world and not spectators. It means that we have to break the fourth wall and to come up on stage in the reality as well, and to become active. So while you're doing so, when you're activating yourself, saying we're not just spectators or witnessing the conflict, try to break the binaries and the structures of us and them, or that people told you that you are either pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinian. There's no such thing. You have to be pro-justice, pro-peace, pro-reconciliation, pro-dialogue, pro-humanization. And if you are pro-Suli and Chen, you are pro both Israel and Palestine, or Israelis and Palestinians. And don't think in these in the structures and the binaries. And for doing so, for doing all these many practices such as the joint memorial ceremony, our demonstrations, our theater workshops and performances, and the house meetings and the lectures and meeting with free army courses and tours and all the activities that we're doing. We need we need means, we need support, we need financial support. So this is what we need here, but there you should be active in terms of translating what I said as becoming actors do. Your congressman or woman, writing about nonviolence as only violence is in the media, promoting nonviolent and binational movements such as Combatants for Peace and the bereaved foreign families and so on. So think out of the structures that we get from the media and from the culture and from the everything we get, and try to break the binaries and to transform them into action. Suli, go on with some concrete.
I just in the same line with Chen, I think people here, like what we represent is really just ask people to be part of the solution rather than stuck being part of the problem. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people like that around the world that want Palestinian Israelis to fight to the last child. So we choose life for the kids of this place, for a different future. And practically, aside of what Chen said, we are aware that this conflict and this place means a lot to millions of people around the world, and it's not a local conflict for good and bad reasons. And actually, we try to mobilize as many people around the world to support non-violence struggle by different means. So for now, for example, just to be practical, like we had American Friends of Combatants for Peace. You can definitely be connected with them to do different kind of advocacy and maybe financial support. As you know, like especially the Memorial Day ceremony is the highest cost that we had every year, actually. And also for people that live in Europe, because I see some names in Berlin and in Europe also, we do have supporter groups in Berlin, in Germany, and Switzerland and other places in Europe. So we definitely, every voice is really important. And there are list of things that individual also or groups can do to support our mission if they align with us. And the most important thing to say that you can be in touch with us. It's like you can go to our social media and newsletter and also share it with your circles. Because as we know, the mainstream media, they just report about how many Palestinians killed every day and how many Israelis has been killed and so on. And we want to make this activism as attractive as more than the militarization thing, which is like a big mission. And I feel this solidarity with us is a really important for me to mention. Is not coming important to come from being aware consciously. That's not coming from a savior place, because while we try to support each other, we basically save ourselves. That's really another big conversation, but it's really important for me to mention this. So anyone feels moved and want to be in touch with us and have conversations with us, have any follow-up with us, please reach out to us, either here or our other international network.
Thank you. And I've shared a couple of links in the chat for the memorial. One is a sign up if you're going to physically attend in Tel Aviv, and one is to support the memorial financially. So the two links there are in the chat box. So we're going to finish on the question that was asked the most. And I think it's so important to end on this point. And the question is, where do you find the hope and strength to keep going through these dark times? Chen, do you want to start and we'll end with Sully?
Yeah, on one hand, this is a very easy question for me because it feels natural or human, that I really deeply feel that I have no other chance, no other option, because I really couldn't live in Israel without being responsible for my own hope. I mean, it's almost, it's not a religious faith, but I feel that, or belief, but I feel it's something which is the deepest sense of responsibility for me is not to lose hope. I got it from Paulo Freire, the Brazilian thinker. He said that oppressed people, and you can change the word, the term oppressed by victims or people who suffer or people who struggle or whatever you want. But the only responsible that oppressed people have is not to lose hope, because oppressors and people with oppressive power, they will do whatever they can in order to make you lose hope. And this is why the systematic violence happen or occur, because this, as he termed it, he coins it as the culture of death. This is a slippery slope to think that I have no other option rather than to protect myself, use violence, and so on. And then everything else serves as a justification for that. And that always brings people to culture of death. I remember my mother was very happy and proud of me when I joined the army, and she knew that I'm going to be a combatant soldier and I might die in a war or in a battle. And the Israelis always blame the Palestinian mothers for sacrificing their own children and happy with the sacrificing their children and so on. I can say in a very responsible way that both societies have a culture of death, and this is very related to the ceremony, to the memorial ceremony. So for me, hope is the contrary of the culture of death, and this is why the ceremony is hopeful and is an alternative for the culture of death or the perpetuation of death culture.
Shukran, Khen, thank you. Yeah, I like to share truthfully, honest with you, like one of the hardest things usually how to sell hope, especially to people that are in hopelessness situation. And sometimes it's really harder to sell hope to more privileged people, and I really seen that happen. For me personally, I come from I got a gift of being optimistic by, I believe, from the universe, from my mom. So I like carry hope always, like in my DNA somewhere. I also want to say, like towards the end, I come from a indigenous warrior family, to be like honest and truth. So what I do, I feel is not even, it's a choice, but also it's a mission. It's a mission that really keeps me optimistic, like doing what we're doing is the main reason for me to exist and resist in this land. Otherwise, if I lose hope that I'm privileged to some level, I could leave. But I will be sad. And my life is fulfilled by this mission. And I feel also coming from like kind of ancient family here, just to mention in the end, like, because I know like many people think of Middle East as just like a, backward people, uncivilized people, all of this shit. I would just really want to say, like, I come from a village, and my family and many communities here still practice ancient wisdom and lots of old local resources that I feel it's important to use for the resolution here. And just one example, because we are towards the end, called Sulha, which means the reconciliation. It's thousands of years of Middle East culture that really bloody conflict among tribes. As I said, I come from a tribal society. That this bloody conflicts has been solved and turned into forgiveness, and people are generous when it comes to the moment to show love and forgiveness, including to the one that really harms them. And that's where the real thing, as Chen mentioned, this is not a theory, academic thing, is really a real living example. With all what we said also, like as a grounded people here, we see the reality, we feel it, we live the reality every day. Here at the same time, as somebody said, like keep one leg in reality and one leg in the dream and the vision. And I feel this balance is really keeping us like in a higher spirit. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chen. Thank you, Suli, for being so generous with your time and so open with us. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. And keep an eye out over the next week or so, so you can find the links to join the memorial from where you are. We'll send them quite close to the date for security purposes, so do keep an eye out for that. And hopefully we'll do this again soon.